Hello and welcome to episode 198 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly off-topic podcast. My name is Mike Sollosi, and I am joined for yet another episode on Trials of Mana, the artist formerly known as Seiken Densetsu 3, with three other panelists, same from 2 weeks ago, starting with Greg Delmage.
What up, everybody? I'm back.
And Alana Hagues.
Hey, we're representing the Mana Angels.
And Zach Wilkerson.
Hey there.
All right, we left off at roughly the midpoint of Trials of Mana last episode. We went to the end of the Mana Sanctuary, and things got to a really dark place for a minute. But since then, Alana, how many times have you beaten this game? 3?
No, you exaggerate. I've been close to starting a third playthrough, but I have other Retro Encounter games to play.
That's true for me as well. But you introduced yourself as representing the Mana Angels. You did that all ladies playthrough already?
Yeah, all beaten, all done. Very
Awesome.
satisfied with it.
Unironically, I think that was my favorite run I've ever done in this game, which I did several years ago, mostly because it taught me to use skills during regular encounters and not just be a meathead and punch everything.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about it much last week, but Trials of Mana is a much harder game than Secret of Mana was. It's a lot more challenging. The mobs are a lot more dangerous than the bosses, I would say, in most cases. But like, if you have to buff, like Secret of Mana, you could just hit things and heal occasionally, and the magic was broken. There are still ways to break it in this game, but there's not. The chain casting is not as easy to do, and you have to use everything at your disposal. It's really challenging. It's in some parts not the hardest thing in the world, but it's rewarding. It's nice and fun. I think.
There's odd difficulty spikes. Like I'm not sure if we mentioned this in the last episode, but I think one of the hardest fights in the game is when you fight Hawkeye's two ninja buddies, Bill and Ben, right before the fire.
Yeah, they're the worst.
I think that was officially the hardest one in the whole game, actually.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right. That one, either that one or the Darkshine Knight at the end of Angela, or at the beginning of Angela and Durin's final dungeon, I think are the two most challenging fights. Because sometimes you could be, doing okay and executing your strategy, but the enemy will chain 3 special moves together and kill 2/3 of your party, and there's not a great way to prepare for that. But what Alana alluded to, and what something that I've been evangelizing about this game forever: don't ignore your spells and skills. Like buffing your teammates and debuffing your enemies, and using skills all the time, and not saving all of your mana or all of your MP for boss fights is really, really important. And like when I was going through the final dungeons of the game, I had Reese in her Fenrir Knight class, so she was able to debuff all enemies at once. I would just do attack down and defense down at the beginning of almost every room, just to prevent me from unexpected full screen text.
It does the really cool thing as well. Like if you walk into a room and there's a mob, but there's like one off screen. If you cast the spell on all the enemies, it doesn't select the one off screen, but if it runs on screen, it still counts it. It's quite cool.
Okay.
Whereas
it's definitely
in
more
Mana,
accurate than Mana, yeah.
Yes, in Secret of Mana, it would skip that one that comes on at the end. So
there's more mechanical conveniences in SD3, but it gets unusually difficult at times. And I'll talk about that Darkshine Knight boss fight that definitely killed me 4 or 5 times when I was playing it a few weeks ago. But for now, let's go to where we left off on the plot. After the Mana Sanctuary, you go to the home kingdom of whatever the conquering nation was. So if your main character was Durin or Angela, you go to Altina. If your main character was Kevin or Charlotte, you go to the Beast Kingdom, or Ferolia is what they call it now. And if your main character was Reese or Hawkeye, then you go to Nabarl. And you know what? All 3 of those dungeons are kind of challenging because there's random locked doors. It's not easy to tell where you are or where you're supposed to be going. And at least for Altina, where I was, I've only beaten the game once this time. I'm a little past halfway on the second run, but so I was going through Altina, and it's like you have to go down a few floors, through a door that's kind of hard to see, then go outside and around, and then through another building. It was a little confusing for what should have been an intermediate dungeon, or like even an interstitial dungeon.
Yeah, I think the castle dungeons actually are a bit of a pain because I was at Ferolia for Charlotte's story, and I definitely got lost a few times because so many of the corridors and the rooms look exactly the same, and a lot of the mobs are really similar. So for Ferolia, you have
Yeah.
groups of werewolves, and werewolves in this game, I think I said last week, last episode, they're not fun. They are really not fun the further along you get.
Especially
They
when you
have
get those full screen text. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
no,
Brutal.
werewolves, ninjas, and knights. Those are the three that, and also sometimes the, oh shoot, the queen bees that can do the Reese light shot spear.
Yeah.
Surprise full screen text will mess you up in this game.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's that werewolf, like the moon one.
Ludger?
One of Kevin's skills. Yeah, and it just can really mess you up
Definitely.
if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, Ludger's he's at the end of the Moonlight Forest when you're meeting right before you meet Luna for the first time. He's one of those surprise challenge bosses too, but I don't think he's quite as bad as Bill and Ben.
No. Once you figure out that he counters everything, then it's pretty easy. And as long as you stay topped up with healing, it's fine. Because he can't heal himself. He's only got Moon Saber, I think. So.
Yeah, I mean, he counters every level 2 tech, right? Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
He definitely does spells.
and Bill and Ben will counter any spell. I'm not sure about level 2 techs, but there's also 2 of them.
Yeah.
Plus, with the healing, the other thing is you can't exploit it like you could in Secret of Mana. Like, if you timed it right and your character hit 0, you could heal them back up to full health before it registered that they were actually KO'd, whereas this one's like, no, it will heal them, but it won't actually bring them back to life.
Yeah,
so
sometimes it would
like,
fire off a spell when they were at 1, and it still wouldn't bring
and
them
that
back
drops
for
to
me.
0.
Yeah, it's the lag from the special attack you've got. It's like somebody, one of the enemies has used a tech on you, and then you've used a spell back immediately. Yeah, and then your dice. So it's just the game is trying to catch up with itself, essentially.
Second Ninja 3 is not very forgiving about that.
Well, yeah, they've got like this interesting system that I do like, but it definitely can be to your detriment sometimes. But the whole queuing up system of text and spells and such, because sometimes you'll be trying to get into the menu or trying to get something done and it won't queue up for you because the one enemy's using a skill, there's another one ready to follow up. You have your 2 AI ready to trigger theirs, and then finally your spell will go. And you can get locked in and not get back to healing in time before the enemy triggers some sort of all-screen attack again. That you're just like, well,
I've gone from full health to 0 because the Darkshine Knight did all 3 of Duran's full-screen techs in a row without me to act in between them. But we'll get to that soon. Anyway, those 3 castle dungeons, which you only go through one depending on who your team is, are kind of rough. There's no boss in any of them, but you're dealing with ninjas and golems and mages and werewolves, and none of those are easy to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have an emotional confrontation where you do a hostage exchange for the ferry, and and then you go into my favorite part of the game, where you have a map, you have 8 bosses, and you can do them in almost any order you want. We are in the Mega Man section of Trials of Mana.
Boss rush!
Trials of Mana Man.
Yep.
Oh, it's so great. There's the 8 Benevodons have been unleashed. You always fight the 8th one, the Benevodon of Darkness, last. But for the first 7, you can go through them in any order that you want. Each of those 7 locations is basically corresponding to a location where you explored earlier in the game, but it takes it a little bit further, like a little bit deeper into the cave or the zone or what have you. And you basically go through a themed stage and fight an elemental themed boss, and all of the bosses are so creative and weird.
They're so gorgeous. This is SNES sprite work at its best.
It's my
some of the bosses before had been really cool as well, but these are like the movements of them and everything. It's
just how giant they are usually too, especially Dolan, which is like the weirdest boss I've maybe ever fought. Like my favorite thing. Giant goat boy.
Dolan really reminds me of a boss fight in Dragon Quest V against Bjorn, because
absolutely.
Yeah, because it's similarly a giant monster with a animal face climbing up the side of a tower, but you have to interact with him much more directly in Seiken Densetsu 3. But The Benevodons are all these creative boss fights that are beautifully animated, and a lot of them have pretty cool dungeons beforehand. Like, I'm not going to defend like going through the exact same corridors of Wind Dungeon again, or going through some samey floors of the Tower of the Moon, but uh, the light ruins are kind of crazy and much more
Yeah.
bright and golden than anything else in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they're beautifully animated. Like the sprite work in that area alone was stunning.
And I got lost there for so long, it'll be stuck in my mind forever.
Yeah, you have to solve that light darkness puzzle towards the end. That's a little bit vague unless you already know the answer, like I did, I guess.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, we already talked about Dolan a little bit. He's the Moon Benevodon, and he looks like a giant were-goat.
Yep. It's so cool.
Yeah,
and
it's my favorite.
He has unique boss music, and also like you see him climb up the side of the tower, like almost like a tokusatsu kaiju monster or something.
Definitely kaiju fight, yeah.
Yeah, where he, like you see each arm clamber up, and then he raises his upper body over the tower wall. It's big drama, and he's kind of hard if you fight him later.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't mention. I think each dungeon is a multiple level of 2. I think the first dungeon you go through, all the enemies will be level 28, but every time you defeat one of the Benevodons, all of the other dungeons go up by 2 levels. So,
that's correct. Yeah.
I might have the exact numbers wrong, but when you get to the 7th or 8th Benevodon, they're in the level 38-40 range. So they'll be much stronger if you save them for later, which can be a problem if you have Light Gazer or Dolan 7th, because they'll learn more spells and be much more powerful.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they're tricky as it is.
Yeah. I sort of knew this ahead of time, so I saved Landumber and Dangard last because I had Angela on my team and I could blast them with level 2 sorceress spells.
Yeah,
I kind of figured it out as I went and got a sense for it, because I think the fairy reminds you right out the gate that don't forget that everything is going to get stronger as you defeat them. So then I was like, oh, well, then I want to keep something that I know can have elemental weaknesses against with my sabers.
Yeah, so because it's a lot easier to find elemental saber attack, like your ice, fire, wind, earth elements. It's saving those for last, I think, is easier almost in every case, because there's no way to get effective moon or tree spells unless you have Ranger Hawkeye on your team. That's the only scenario where you can where you can deal with those at all. So like I like doing Miss Bowman, Dolan, and Light Gazer early, and then the four cardinal elements later. But that's, again, I probably should have told you that, and I didn't.
It's okay. We figured it out. I mean, I'm lucky that I did like Gazer early on, just because I was like, I don't really have much against him, but he's just a pain in the butt to fight. Like, it was so long just because he has such a narrow hit window, and then he teleports away, or it teleports away rather, and it's just such a challenge with that it just dragged it out. Like, I didn't struggle strength wise. I definitely wasn't getting too battered by it, but it's just trying to pin it down to do damage to it was a hassle.
Yeah, he's one of the bosses as well that relies on status effects, because he uses lightsaber and also turns you into Mini and Moogle, I believe.
Right, yep.
So, if you don't have that mini hammer on you, then it's going to be a pain in the backside if you don't have anyone.
I didn't even think about using that mini hammer. Oh, man.
Oh, it does the same thing
using a
as
spell
Secret
every
of
time.
Mana. Oh, it does the same thing.
Yeah, it was the Moogle hammer in Mana, wasn't it?
No, it was
the Moogle
or was it Mini
belt.
It was the
Moogle belt and a mini hammer.
Oh, it was the Moogle belt, yes.
Yeah, you got. I'm not sure if there's a Moogle belt equivalent in SD3.
There isn't in this.
No, you just cure it with using the hammer. You can actually cure every status effect in Trials of Mana by using the hammer.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
It also resets all of your buffs and debuffs. So if you ever get stat down, you can just use the hammer and it'll make you mini, and then if you use it again, it'll make you big.
And to think I was using Mama Poto oil like a sucker.
Yeah, but Mama Poto oil is useful because by the end of the game, you've got so much money you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a definite curve at one point where all of a sudden money stops mattering.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit weird because when you're fighting the Benevodons, you do meet a couple of cat merchants in this game. They do not have bang and dance moves like most of the other merchants in Trials of Mana.
I love that they kept that going.
Yeah, but they sell you basically the best available weapons and armor. You don't pick out weapons and armor out of treasure chests in this game pretty much ever, which is A little strange for a Japanese
With the
RPG.
exception of like the seeds, I guess.
Yeah, but no, you don't get weapons out of the chest. You just get seeds, and then you plant those seeds in a town. You only get weapons and armor in safe spaces. But they're especially the weapons from the last couple merchants in the game, the cat merchants outside of each Benevodon dungeon, and then the weapon seller in Peta, get so expensive. I think I think it's over 30,000 for each of the top tier weapons in Peta. After a certain point in the game, I just stopped buying weapons for Angela or Carly.
Yeah, pretty much. I did exactly the same. I prioritized armor first and then weapons for the main attackers. And then if I had some spare money, then I might do magic accessories for the people who had rubbish magic defense.
I don't buy accessories until the very last merchant because they only increase your defense by about 1. And they cost about half as much as an armor piece. So like I prioritize weapons for my main attacker, and then armor pieces for everybody, and then just save up for the next merchant because it'll be so expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know, it worked out for me, but I think I finished the game at a higher level, so I did a lot of extra grinding because trying to find the class change stuff. But I imagine we'll get to that shortly.
Yeah. At level 38, you can farm seeds called question seeds, which will give you your items for your second level class change, which is again at level 38. And you also around the same time start finding gear seeds, which give you the best weapons and armor in the game, but they'll give you weaker equipment if you haven't done the second class change yet. So you really shouldn't plant any gear seeds until after everyone's in their second class. So we don't need to each go over our entire teams and their endgame classes, so let's each pick one character and talk about how their class change went for that one character. I'll go first. I did something that I really like doing in this, and that is going through Angela's light side classes, because her first class change is to Sorceress, which she'll learn 5 new spells, and then her second class change to either Grand Diviner or Archmage, she'll learn to multi-target those 5 new ones, and then learn a sort of 6th super spell. And I think that Angela's light classes are way better than her dark classes, because it gives her more spells to use against the Benevodon bosses in the mid part of the game, because on her dark side, she'll only learn 1 new spell instead of 5. And then for the endgame classes after level 38, the endgame dungeons after level 38, you can just multicast one of her level 2 spells on an entire group of enemies just to soften them up for Kevin or Hawkeye or whomever to finish them off. It's like Angela's light classes, I think, are meaningfully better than her dark classes for maybe everything except for the final bosses of the game, in which you could argue that the dark ones have some advantages. But because she just consistently gets better and more useful and encourages me to cast spells more, which I like, I had a lot of fun going from Angela from Sorceress to Grand Diviner. So who else wants to volunteer one of their characters' class changes? Play some show and tell.
I mean, for me, it was Charlotte as Necromancer, because she gets, I can't remember what the name of the spell is, the thing that does a debuff to every stat.
That is Black
Curse.
Yeah, Black Curse, which they might have renamed for the remake. I'm not 100% sure.
No,
I think that sounds right. I mean, as soon as you get that spell, and then I also was Starlancer with Reese, so I'm able to buff everyone in the party and then debuff the boss. I mean, like, I was beating bosses in, I'm not kidding, like 40 seconds. I mean, it just trivialized them. So I mean, it was interesting because I thought the rest of the game was hard until I got to the end, and then like after that, it was just smooth sailing because of her class change and just sort of the symmetry of her and Reese in particular. And then I had Kevin just wrecking at that point as well. So yeah.
Yeah, Charlotte is always the best support character, no matter how you build her. But in her final class is basically just what flavor of support do you want to offer, and Black Curse with the Necromancer is one of the most powerful spells in the game. It will trivialize almost every boss fight afterwards.
Oh, it did, absolutely.
But she is way stronger against single targets than multiple targets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For myself, it was pretty clear from the last episode which direction I was going with my other two, with all light, all dark. But with Reese, fortunately, she was the one I found her class change item for first, so I was able to change her into Dragon Master and get, again, all of her buffs and her really cool single target spell ability or skill ability, which was really neat. She comes screaming in, riding a dragon almost, and then she gets a dragon to summon, which is rad for her actual big spell. And I liked that dragon better the idea of when I was kind of looking at which one to go with, just because it at least applies a poison effect kind of thing to anybody who survives it.
Yeah, that's the advantage of Dragon Master. I think it has Reese's highest intellect stat, and or either that or Fenrir Knight. And she doesn't learn to multi-target or stat downs, but the dragon summon with which is called Jormungand, with the poison is very, very powerful. It'll be her best big spell. Starlancer Marduk's spell can sometimes wipe out entire regular encounters because I think it shrinks enemies, which sort of behaves as an instant kill.
It doesn't. It silences. So I can't remember what it's called in the localization, but it silences. Her vanity summon is the one that miniaturizes everything, right, but it means you don't get experience points if you kill things.
That's right. Yes. But yes, some like silence is very powerful too. But Dragon Master does have higher intellect than Star Lancer, and the poison is noticeable. So it's the reason to go Dragon Lancer is that dragon summon. I also had Least going dark, but I did Fenrir Knight so I could debuff everyone. And I think Fenrir Knight has like 1 point higher of strength than Dragon Master. I think.
She also has a dog in her artwork for Fenrir Knight.
So. Yeah. I think she's wearing either a dog or some elaborate furs. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's like a wolf fur or something like that. But yeah, it was either or for me. But I just thought that was the better way to go. Get the dragon that just vomits all over everything and leaves poison. And I figured
it is powerful,
they could counter most of the things I was fighting were bosses, I felt anyways, although I definitely would have been more useful in a lot of the random encounters, but I just figured having the single target debuff was fine enough.
Yeah, for bosses, for bosses, single target is enough. But it's like, what do you want to do when you fight a big, maybe a room that could be problematic? Do you want to have the dragon vomit poison everywhere, or do you want to give them all attack down or defense down?
And if I think I went the other way, I'd have someone who does an all-party buff or all-party debuff at the very least, which I had neither of. I just had single buffs and single debuffs in my group. Actually, I had no buffs at all except for sabers.
Right, so Alana, what's one class change in the second half of the game that was eye-opening or notable for you?
Well, actually, you said my Angela one, and Zach said my Charlotte one. So I guess I'm completing the recycle because I picked Vanadis. So
yeah,
I mean, the reason I picked Vanadis was because I picked Starlancer last time and decided I still needed a buffer. The single target buffs actually benefit the girls' party, I think, because really the main thing you want to do is get a mental up or mind up on Angela as quick as possible so she can start casting straight away. And then for most bosses in the second half of the game, because I had Charlotte as my main character, most of them were magical anyway. So really it was just a case of putting mind up on everybody and then attack up on Reese and then just
Light
letting
shot
loose.
Spear.
Yeah, exactly. And she has one of the best full screen texts in the entire game. It's ridiculously good.
That's the reason to use Vanity's Reese. Is she's the only one of Reese's final classes that has a full screen level 3 tech, and it's also the Reese class with the highest strength. So it is basically, it gives her a full screen tech that's as good as Kevin's or Duran's, which is awesome, because I mean that's the best thing about Duran, is that he gets a bunch of gets a bunch of full screen text late in the game. That I only did Vanity's Reese once, and I was a little disappointed in her support spells, but absolutely not disappointed in Light Shot Spear, because that skill rules.
I think like the single buffs benefit the girls team because they don't all need physical buffs, and again because a lot of the late game bosses are not physical attackers. Like I don't think I need to use defense up, and in the worst case scenario, what am I going to do? Buy items, and use them. She was really, really good. She was wiping things out really quickly, but Angela is where I put all my focus into anyway, because I knew she would be wiping out mobs, and her doppelganger spell is really, really, really good. So
yeah, I think I might have mentioned this in the previous episode. Angela's a little bit one-dimensional, but her one dimension is just nuking enemies with elemental spells, and that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good dimension to explore.
You were mentioning how most of the enemies in the late game are magical in nature. I think that's basically true for every one of the late game bosses except for Belladonna and Darkshine Knight.
Yeah, that's right. I think so.
And the final bosses are all sort of physical and magical, but we'll get to them in a minute. Basically, after the 7 Benevodon battles, you unlock or maybe at the 7th one, you unlock the final town in the game, Peta, which was a town that was wiped out by by I think the Dragon Emperor like decades earlier. And but it still survives if you go to its ruins, and like its memory is so powerful that you can go back in time and visit it. And if you visit there with Duran in your party, you'll have an emotional moment where he meets the king of Volsena and his best friend Loki. Loki is Duran's father, and so Duran will briefly see his father leaving the armor shop if you go to Peta with Duran in the party.
That's cool.
But so anyway, you can get your best equipment in there, and then after you defeat the first 7 Benevodons, a person in PETA will tell you where the final one is, the Darkness Benevodon, Zabelfar.
Zabelfar. Yeah.
And depending on who your main character is, this will set you into the final set of dungeons. For Hawkeye or Reese, it's the Cave of Darkness and then the Palace of Darkness. They just love They just love darkness over there. For Charlotte and Kevin, you don't have to travel very far because it's the Jungle of Illusion and Mirage Palace right outside of PETA.
Oh, that's what that's for. Okay.
Yeah, and then for Duran and Angela, it's the I think it's the Desert of Glass and the Dragon's Maw, which was called Dragon Hole in the old translation.
Yep.
Dragon's Maw is a better choice.
Okay, so like big hole.
Yeah, got it. I still can't believe that thing. I didn't play Ys 8 until the translation had been fixed, but just hearing about it from you and Derek had me like, how many times did they use Primordial or Archeo in that game?
Well, I had a shot glass next to me and a bottle of something, and tell you what, it was pretty empty after.
It's like,
That's a professional review there.
I wrote this 2,000-word review, and I don't remember any of it.
Oh, yeah. That was a 1,200. That's
Okay.
pretty good.
But that's the basic framework for the Benevodon bosses and stages and endgame dungeons. But we've talked about how delightful some of these Benevodons are, but let's go into them in some more detail. Alana, what do we love about our favorite goat boy Dolan?
Everything. I just love the like how imposing he is, really. It is the most spectacular piece of sprite work I've seen for a long time. Yeah, I just love the way he climbs up the building. I like that he's challenging. He is the hardest Benevodon, I would say. It's just a really unusual design. Like, all the other ones are just like sentient floaty things or rock or a dragon, and then this thing's like big furry goat that climbs up building and slaps you, and it's great.
And he casts some real nasty moon magic on you too.
He does, yeah. He is really, really hard. He's not really weak to anything either. Like, and as you said, you don't really get any good like dryad spells or lunar spells until later
Hawkeye learns a couple, and I'm not sure if
it's
spamming
light class only as well, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's Hawkeye's ranger spells only, and I'm not sure how effective they are against Olin either.
Yeah,
I like Ninja Hawkeye so much that I barely have ever done Ranger Hawkeye.
No,
well, he's got that big like Kamehameha thing that you just need to defend against, and it's a rad bucket. You need to be on top of healing right after that, otherwise you are smoked.
You really do. But yeah,
what's better, Dolan's Kamehameha or Divine Fist Kevin's Kamehameha? These are both pretty good.
I mean, Dolan, just because it's a really cool, unique animation, and he's so huge, and he just like opens his mouth up just to like scream at you while he does it, and it's intimidating as heck.
Yeah, he has a pretty horrifying scream.
He does.
Yeah,
Zabelfire has one too. Zabelfire uses the same one off of the ghost ship.
Yeah, the high pitched scream.
Yeah.
So yeah, our big giant moon goat kaiju boy Dolan is very special to us. Zach, did you have a favorite Benevodon encounter in this game?
Oh, it was Dolan for sure.
Okay.
I mean, it was like, I thought it was the second most challenging. I thought Light Gazer was more challenging personally, just because status effects, I didn't have a great way to handle them at that point. But other than that, I didn't think most of them were too hard. But yeah, Dolan, Alana said everything I was going to say. Like, the sprite work is amazing. It's totally unique. I just remember looking at it and being like, oh my gosh, this is a boss. It was really fun, I thought. So yeah, I echo what Alana said.
Well, my favorite Benevodon fight is probably also Dolan, but I think my second favorite is different from yours. It's Xian Bie, the fire Benevodon, just because I love the different forms it takes and the way the animated fire spins around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
cool.
it's this weird like demon bird head thing with just but the fire can swirl like a tornado or in this like cross pattern or in a regular circle, and Jianbei's attacks are different depending on what form they're in, and it just looks really cool even if you can just sort of ice blast it to death. It's not that challenging.
Well, it's the trick too of knowing to go for the furnace instead of it too, right?
Well,
I don't do that.
No, you don't you don't have to. Going for the furnace just means it'll take away its means of healing itself.
Yeah. I just kill it quick.
If you can get it killed quick enough, I guess that wouldn't really matter. I was just glad it didn't go like a Son of Sun kind of route where you had to like roulette pick which friggin' fire was the actual weak one.
Oh no, Son of Sun is a puzzle boss of a very special nature that you don't. Fortunately, nothing in Trials of Mana is like Son of Sun, but Jianbei is a pretty cool daughter of Sun.
It was neat.
True.
But mostly I like how that boss animates and not how it fights necessarily. Greg, did you have a favorite Benevodon?
I mean, I really appreciated how much of a breeze Miss Palm was. It was the second to last one, and I was like, it's going to be tough because it's Dryad and whatnot, but it really didn't do much of anything. But I do like how it looks. But I liked Figmund. It was the first one I went against, so it was definitely the easiest in a lot of ways, but I liked how at one point he just left the screen and then came back on the underside. I thought that was a neat little thing where it can keep getting at you and get at it.
Yeah, if you don't have a spellcaster for that section's a pain.
Yeah, I think it went under like 3 or 4 times for me because I didn't have any major spellcasters.
Yeah, it went under for me, and I think it died before it resurfaced because it's like, okay, I guess I'm just going to keep casting Explosion with Angela. No change in plan.
Yeah, for me, unless I got my skill up at the right time or had there's Tesla oil, which gives you the max out, so you can target it with your special abilities.
Yeah.
But like I didn't really have too much
others. The same effect as the Aura Wave spell that Kevin and Hawkeye can learn. Yeah.
Rad. But otherwise, I just thought that was kind of a neat dynamic trick that the developers threw in there to kind of mix up the boss battle.
You mentioned Mistborn being a little bit easy. I don't know. I think it's a little hard, especially if you let poison hang on a little too long, because Mistborn can poison everyone pretty quickly.
That's true. I just found it wasn't hitting me very often. It was weird.
But also,
it doesn't do a lot of damage.
It was the first one I fought, and I was something like 7 levels under leveled, so I struggled a little bit.
I thought it was kind of a damage sponge. Like I feel like that was one of the longer ones to take down for me.
It definitely is. It just doesn't dish out as much damage unless you let it poison you too much. But I did it quite late.
You can drag out, I guess.
Yeah.
I suppose that's fair.
I guess also I like to watch Miss Palm's facial expressions because it goes from being a happy pumpkin to an angry pumpkin to a sad pumpkin. Yeah. It's just really, really cute.
It's a good throwback to that enemy in the dwarf village in Secret of Mana. It was very in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh, Tropico.
Yes.
Yeah. The arms are exactly the same. I think I remember thinking that when I fought it. I also want to mention Dangard as well, which is the Wind Benevodon, for being a really cool fight on the back of Flammy.
Yeah, that one is also a huge damage sponge. I think that's usually
that one overstayed its welcome for me.
Yeah, that fight usually the one that lets that last the longest for me because you also have to recast your buffs every time you change perspective.
And
that was annoying.
And it'll be like fighting it with Flammy on the left versus on the right versus in the foreground, and the fighting on the back of Flammy. And the transitions are cool, but they're annoying. Is like, all right, I gotta cast Earth Saber again.
I always do it. I usually do it last as well because it's probably the easiest one. I would say it doesn't do a lot of damage. It just takes too long again, like Miss Palm does.
I don't remember which one I did last, but I remember having the easiest time with Figmund just because it decided to like leave the floor and have me continue casting Explosion on it.
Yeah,
Figmund was my last.
Yeah, Figmund was probably one of the easier bosses. The biggest gulf between the dungeon and the boss because the dungeon has the Copper Knights, and the Copper Knights can full screen tech and kill you in one hit, and I hate them.
Knights, ninjas, werewolves, and bees can full screen tech you and kill you so fast.
At least I knew there were werewolves in the Moonshine Tower. At least I knew what I was getting myself into. I didn't have any issues with the knights before that dungeon. And then you go to the Ice Labyrinth and you just walk into a room and they're like, oh, here you go, full screen tech. Oh,
Wasn't ready for you.
Nope. But you get question mark seeds. I don't know what to call them. Do I go seeds?
Yeah, I always call them.
It's a good place for that.
Yeah, I always start getting the question seeds, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you can level up if it's 18 and 38 or 18 and 36, because I remember I've seen it in multiple places.
38.
38, yeah.
That's what I thought it was.
It is 38, yeah.
All right, yeah, but anyway, I start fighting them right after you beat the first 7 Benevodons, because there's an enemy in every single endgame dungeon called Beholders, which are these big purple eyes that are guaranteed to drop a question seed. I think at a 60% rate if you kill them last in the group.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it felt like 20%, but yeah, it took me a lot longer than it should have.
It's I farmed those, and once I have everyone in the final class, I farm either Great Rabbites, Night Blades, or Greater Demons for gear seeds. And
the werewolves drop them as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but where do you fight werewolves in the?
They're in the Forest of Illusion.
Okay, all right, okay,
yeah.
Got it.
In the Dark Cavern or whatever.
Oh yeah, they're in the Dark Cavern as well.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
well I was in the Glass Desert, so I guess I was in the one place where you don't fight strong demon werewolves. But
too hot for the fur.
But the grinding for gear seeds is the only time I really do any grinding in this game, and I actually got enough gear seeds. I think you need 12 to get everyone's best equipment, and I got 13 or 14, but I got sick. I got bored of resetting the day to try and get the last 2 pieces of equipment. So I only got 10 of the 12 best equipment items for my party this time.
Yeah, the only one I didn't get was Charlotte's weapon. So I was like, that's fine. I don't need it necessarily.
I think I got the weapon and a cape. And that was it.
I was missing a 1 helm and 1 accessory, so I didn't lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
And I didn't get Durin's best sword, but I got all his armor and I got everything for Reese. But what was keeping me grinding is I just could not get a duelist tag to save my life. I kept getting battler tags or Glipnirs. And I was like, I don't need either of these. Stop it. And then finally I was getting Charlotte's, but then all I was getting was her bottles. And it just took me so long to get Durin. I had Reese for ages and then finally started getting stuff for Charlotte because I just also wasn't getting anyone dropping them. So that's why I finished the game at level 49.
Yeah,
Save scum?
Yeah, I save scum a little bit. You can reset You can reset the RNG by getting into 1 battle.
Yeah.
So I would save at the end. If the seed didn't grow how I wanted it to grow, I would go out, fight 1 battle, save at the end again, and then try again.
That's what it was for me.
Yeah, but you just resetting the game or just sleeping at the end will not reset the RNG.
That's what I wasn't doing the battle. Yeah, because I kept seeing the same outcome, and I was like, "What? I thought I could reset, and it would reset." Nope.
No, you have to mess around. You have to do something that'll create a random number, and getting into a battle is the easiest way to do it. At least I think so. But so I still got bored save scumming for the last 2 items. So it's like, I'm level 44. I'll go and beat the game.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some endgame stuff because this is where I think the character interactions get the most interesting. I'll go into the Durin Angela path a little bit, then maybe one of you guys can discuss the others. The final boss is the Dragon Emperor, the same one that the King of Falsenna fought decades ago, and killed his best friend Loki, Duran's father, and it's being manipulated by the Crimson Wizard, who sort of took over the mage nation of Altina. And when you go through that dungeon as Duran or Angela, or both, you fight Darkshine Knight first, and I really hate this mofo because he's basically just a very powerful version of one of the Knight regular enemies, but he can chain up to 3 full screen texts together, or he did multiple times. Then I died a couple times against him, so I basically I beat him by casting attack down on him about every 15 seconds. and then just keeping the pressure on so that when he chained 2 or 3 together, I would be just left with about 100 HP instead of dying. But then after you beat him, if Duran's in your team, you realize that he is Duran's father Loki, who was brought back to life by who was brought back to life by the Dragon Emperor.
I was
And
wondering the connection there because I watched some stuff on YouTube and the music for that boss in particular is sad.
Yeah,
So I
it's
was
sad
thinking, well,
music.
why is it sad for Darkshine Knight? So there you go.
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of development out of Darkshine Knight over the course of the game. You'll see him like pop in and out and summon some golems and leave or something, but he'll only have a dialogue if Duran's in the party, and like they'll have sort of some exchanges. And but anyway, and the final boss of Dragon Maw is the Crimson Wizard, which is he also has some cool interactions with Duran or Angela if you fight them with him. If it's with Duran, Duran will talk about finally getting revenge and finally class changing and overcoming him. Uh, and if you defeat him with Angela, he'll mention that he was just like her. He was a person in the kingdom of mages who couldn't use magic. And unlike Angela, who suddenly like used magic to teleport away and learned magic from the spirits, he was given a lot of magic by becoming a tool of the Dragon Emperor. And and what motivated him to do all these horrible things was because he had the same feelings of inadequacy that Angela had, which I thought was a surprisingly cool moment out of Angela's story, which I think is, I don't know, maybe among the more boring stories in this game.
Yeah.
And also the Dragon Emperor, I mean, I thought that both the Darkshine Knight and the Crimson Wizard were easier than him. I'm sorry, were harder than him. The Dragon Emperor is not a very challenging boss at all. I walked all over him.
It is an impressive sprite again, though.
Yes, it is a huge, cool sprite that will attack from the foreground sometimes. Mostly, he's a giant humanoid demon-like dragon. It's a cool fight, but it's not very challenging. He can cast Ancient though, the most powerful spell in the game, which Angela can learn.
Oh yeah.
So you just gotta just make sure your magic defense is up or his magic attack is down, and it'll be fine.
Cool.
So who did Kevin or Charlotte's story and wants to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure, I did. So after you go through the Forest of Illusion, which is a bit of a pain because part of that Jungle of Illusion is like one of those. It's very similar to the Light Bloom Forest, where you have to go in a certain direction to get the right way. So it's almost like one of those endless desert dungeons. So you have to go. If you go right and a chime sounds, you're going the right way. But if you go down and a different noise plays, then you know you're going the wrong way. So there's a very specific path that you have to go to get to the Mirage Palace. After you've beaten Zabulfar, who we didn't talk about really. Zabulfar is cool and hard.
We probably should.
Yeah, we can talk about him now. So Zabulfar is an extremely cool fight and is a bit of a two-parter. So the first phase is just the two Jester heads, one red and one blue. It reminds me of Twintania from Ocarina of Time a little bit. But you just kill those. They can cast spells on you on and off. They can debuff you, dispel all your buffs and things like that. And then all of a sudden they grey out and they get revived. And this third really imposing head comes up, screams, and you have to fight three. It's very cool. I like this one a lot.
I like how the first two heads decay after you defeat them each time. It's a really creepy visual effect.
Yeah, the music that plays in that fight is really, really creepy because it's not used as boss music for any other fight. I think it's used as a piece of dungeon music quite a way back. I don't remember where in particular, but it's just the really faint drumming with the really heavy bass, and that's it, and it's pretty imposing.
Yeah, they do that multiple times in the Benevolent fights. They'll use music that is that is regular dungeon music from earlier in the game, or a unique boss theme. Like I think the one for Dolan is only used in that fight and no other place.
I know Miss Palms is definitely dungeon music. But
yeah, Miss Palms is like regular cave music.
Yeah.
But Zabulfar is like some ghost ship creepy stuff.
Yeah, yep. That's cool. It's really good though. It's not too hard if you have a spellcaster, but it is one of the more trickier ones.
Yeah, I definitely struggled a little bit on that one just to stay alive, especially once the whole kind of like Queen Zeal kind of moment happens with the
yeah, it really does remind me of Queen Zeal actually.
Yeah. But I definitely spammed a lot of Holy Ball with Carly for that one, or sorry, Charlotte.
Definitely, it can instant kill you as well.
Yeah,
it's brutal.
The Annihilate spell, which used to be called Death Spell in the old translation, it's a guaranteed 999 damage if the caster is a higher level than the target. and Angela can learn Annihilate in one of her final classes. So if you're the final bosses of the game are all level 50. So if you level up to 51 and have Angela
God.
in the Rune Mancer class, then she can do a guaranteed 999 on them. But you do not need to be level 51 to fight the bosses here.
Good grief. But yeah, Zabelfar's cool and strong. But once you've beaten him, and in Charlotte's case in particular, you now need to go to the Mirage Palace. You get a Mirage Mirror, I think it is, which uncovers an illusion right at the end of the dungeon, which reveals Goramand, who is the jester who's responsible for capturing Heath and the death of Kevin's best friend. This boss is okay. It's one of those trick ones, so he splits into three, basically. Don't cast multi-hit spells, because if you do, the illusions will cast back at you straight away. That's kind of it, really. You just have to focus on as long as you know which one is the real Goramand, then you're pretty game. He casts a bunch of status effects as well at the same time, which is a pain in the backside, but he's not too bad. Goramand is really strange because he's kind of just like a folly, and I think that might be the case for most people's main villains. So Goramand talks about the Masked Mage quite a lot, and this is where you meet them. So I think he's still called the Masked Mage in the localization anyway. You don't fight him until the very end. He's the final boss. He becomes the Dark Lich, which is a reoccurring boss in the entire series and has the really cool music from Secret of Mana. But yeah, the Mirage Palace is it's a unique dungeon, whereas like the Dark Castle was pretty straightforward, and it was just about breaking down barriers, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. And I don't know what the the Dragon's Maw is like. It's probably just caves and lots of knights and pain in the butt monsters. But Mirage Palace sees you. You go in, and there are 7 orbs around this central pedestal, which you can use to save, and 7 pathways. Now the top one is locked until you light all of these 6 other orbs, and you go down each of them, and they basically make you replay part of a dungeon from each section of the game. So
right.
the bottom left. So the bottom left is like the gemstone caverns from the very beginning of the game. One of them is the Wanderer Forest from when you're going to fight Mistpalm. And a couple of them have bosses at the end. One thing we failed to mention is that in these dungeons, you have to fight reoccurring 3 bosses that you've already fought before. They're basically resurrected versions of bosses, but harder. So some of them
it's the same way in Dragon Maw. You fight you fight recurring bosses from different parts of the game, including the Jewel Leader, and but Dragon Maw is a little bit, if anything, more annoying than the Mirage Palace, because every single time it's like you go and fight one of the bosses, and you have to go back like halfway to the entrance and find the new cave opening that's opened as a result. The Dragon Maw is my least favorite dungeon in this game. I'm sorry, I should say least favorite dungeon of the endgame dungeons available, because the Darkshine Knight battle sucks, and because it's the most annoying to navigate.
Oh, right. Yeah, that doesn't
Crimson Wizard has a lot of magic spells, but he's not as annoying as the Darkshine Knight.
Yeah. So once you've done all of those 6 paths, you've got to the end of the Mirage Palace, and the boss at the end is Heath after you fight Gorva, which is the one off the Dark Ship. Heath is a bit of a pain because, again, he basically gets every single summon in the game. So he has every single status effect to his advantage, and he warps around the place quite a lot. So I did Charlotte's story, so this probably meant a lot more in terms of narrative, because Heath is the very person who Charlotte looked up to, as one who raised her. So she goes off crying, is very emotional about the whole thing. Once you beat him, he reveals that he was brainwashed by the Masked Mage, but he also reveals that the Masked Mage is his father. So
Wendell used to have 2 great priests, the Priest of Light and the Priest of Darkness, and the Priest of Darkness got so hung up about I think he failed to heal someone, and then he just got so obsessed with the pursuit of power that he took to necromancy and then died and was revived and is now the Masked Mage Lich. Yep. And he's Heath's father.
Yeah, but so Heath sacrifices himself, and I'm assuming it depends on what story path you take, because if you remember at the beginning of the game, after the barrier is broken, the Priest of Light is taken ill.
Right.
So if you have Charlotte in your party, you find out that Heath's sacrifice means that he killed her, basically, killed the Priest of Wendell. So yeah, but you don't find that out yet until the end of the game. But yeah, Mirage Palace is I think it's a cool idea. I think Jungle of Illusion's a bit of a pain, especially with all the werewolves and the kind of labyrinthy style, like random Mirage desert dungeons that I hate. If I'm going left, make me go left, not make me go backwards. I hate them so much. But yeah, it's not bad, and I do like the idea of reusing areas, because I found Mirage Palace more interesting than I did Dark Castle or Dark Cave, personally, which was my first playthrough for this game.
Right. I think Dark Castle's pretty cool, just because it's at least a cool environment. And Dragon Maw looks kind of gorgeous. I just hate how it navigates. If I have a favorite set of final dungeons in this game, it might be Dark Castle.
Okay.
I mean, I like the reflective, like, sort of surfaces, and yeah, I mean, I just think it's like it's a unique aesthetic in the game, because most of the time you're outside. I mean, or you're in like a dilapidated, like, old-looking medieval castle. So I thought it was cool.
And Zach, you had Reese as your main character for your run.
I did.
So what was the Dark Cave and Dark Castle like?
So the Dark Cave I actually found incredibly annoying, because I got, like, turned around in it like maybe 3 times, and I kept walking the wrong way. And, like, there's like a place in the Dark Cave where if you, like, go through the wrong passage, it takes you back to the beginning of the Dark Cave, and you can't go through there again.
Yeah, there's like a lot of one-way entrances.
Right.
Once you go through, it's gated, and you have to walk your way back around.
Yeah. And so I found that a little bit frustrating. And I actually, for me, I thought Reese's story was sort of meh. I mean, it's not really related to her too much. I mean, like, her brother Elliot is kidnapped at the beginning, but, like, you end up facing off with this guy named, I think it's the Dark Majesty in this one, right? His Dark Majesty, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Who Belladonna is all about.
Right. And he's like this, like, resurrected, like, prince from the underworld who there was a prophecy about when he was younger that he was going to be like destroy the kingdom. And so they, put him in a dungeon, and then of course he destroys the kingdom because they put him in the dungeon. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't super impressed by the story beats with Reese's story there. The other ones sound more interesting to me. But it's hard for me to talk too much about the bosses, because, like, Belladonna in particular was a boss that I beat in. I mean, it took me no time at all.
Yeah, with Charlotte and Black Curse, and Reese with Starlancer Reese. That will end the boss's life very fast.
Yeah, I mean, none of them were challenging. I mean, the very final boss, which I'm sure we'll get to, took me some time at least, but the other ones just didn't. I didn't find his Dark Majesty challenging, but I did like the aesthetic and the way that the Dark Castle looked, and I thought that the barrier dropping thing actually worked pretty well. So I thought that was a cool dungeon personally. Greg, you played Reese as well, right?
I did, yeah, and I got very intimate with the Dark Cave, because that's where I did a lot of my grinding for my seeds and such, until you get to the part where you have to trigger a certain switch that opens up that cool little, like, light path and lights up the whole dungeon. Like, it's neat how it kind of fades into darkness for most of it until you find the gimmick that lights it up.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And then you make your way through, and then have to battle Malocchio, I think, at the end of it.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And Malocchio was, I think, probably the hardest fight I had for whatever reason. Like, again, he was just a pain to fight, and I think I went unprepared, unfortunately, and didn't have enough Cup of Wishes, because I think he uses Annihilate as well. And he took out Charlotte on me. So that took out my big healer, and I was just down to 2, just kind of wailing on him and hoping for the best. And I think I actually ended up being down to just Durin, and then managed to beat him, which was great. But he was definitely the most challenging fight I had. Belladonna was lengthy as well, just because she's kind of hard to pin him down, and without all the debuffs plus the buffs, definitely slows it down a bit. But yeah, she wasn't too bad. Neither was his Dark Majesty. But overall, exploring the Dark Caves was pretty neat. I just found it obnoxious if you did want to leave, you couldn't really get yourself ported back to the castle easily. Like, you had to walk your way all the way back.
Yeah, that's the only one you have to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wanted to leave to go out when I found seeds to go and try and get my classes up, and which is also a haul when you have to go all the way back to the statue around the mana tree to change your class. It was quite a walk and a commitment. So
the final dungeon is I think more straightforward than the others. It's the Mana Sanctuary again, but
it's pretty short. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also been ruined by the whomever the resurrected final boss is. So a few of the paths are different.
Yeah, you can't navigate the same way, which caught me off guard initially.
Yeah. Yeah, like again, there's some paths are opened or closed because they've been walls have been destroyed and debris has been scattered around, and the final boss is again either the Dragon Emperor, the Demon Prince, or the Masked Mage, depending on who your main character was. And one thing that I haven't done Reese's scenario in some years, but the one thing that I think puts a bit of a pall over that storyline is that the Demon Prince's sprite looks kind of like Elliot.
It does, yeah. I thought that.
And that makes me think, oh man, they kidnapped Elliot to be the vessel for the Demon Prince.
Yeah, okay.
And
didn't catch that.
At least that was my suspicion. But I think you defeat him before he can fully return, because I mean you do see Reese reunite with Elliot in her ending.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because the fairy says she uses the last of her power to somehow spare and save Elliot.
Yes. Oh yeah. Okay.
A bit of a Deus Ex Machina there.
Okay, because I think there's the slightly scary implication that Elliot is used as the Demon Prince's vessel.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and which I think would have been at higher stakes and made it much more interesting. And what were you saying, Alana? Sorry.
I was just gonna say, because I think having Heath as one of the bosses and actually having some kind of connection to Wendell in Charlotte's story actually made her story a lot more interesting to me. Like that personal connection. It's weird because when I look across all three stories and all three bosses, I don't know the details of Duran and Angela's story as much aside from what I've been told here.
Sorry if I spoiled it for you. But
no, it's fine because I've read up the gist of all of them because I'm interested in seeing how they're all different. But like in terms of how they end, it feels like you could say that. I mean, they're all canon, I guess, but you can say that because Dark Lich is the final boss of Charlotte and Kevin's story, and I think they have some of the more stronger emotional pulls. I think that could be considered one of the canons. But then you've got Reese and Hawkeye's story, which has a 2-phase final boss, which is not anything that either of the other two bosses can say.
I think Demon Prince is a little harder than the Lich or the Dragon, but it's but still not that bad.
Yeah, I was prepared for a challenge because I did the Reese story first, and I was led to believe, or I was reading around the forums, but these posts are like 10 years old, everyone was saying that this was the hardest boss in the game, and I didn't even drop below 2/3 health for the entire fight. I was
Bill and Ben are harder.
I was like, I don't even have a healer. Like, I do, but not like Kevin's not as good at healing as Charlotte is.
Not as bad as Bill and Ben. Still not.
Nope.
Yeah, because it just like Bill and Ben just can chain those abilities awkwardly, and it just can really mess you up. Where this doesn't really happen as much with his Dark Majesty.
And you won't
have so many more tools at your disposal too.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Your characters get very powerful after the second class change. So I think that the end game is never that challenging. I think the Lich and the Demon can cast Annihilate, which can be difficult if you're under level 50. But none of the end game scenarios are prohibitively difficult. But I think that seeing the differences between them and just the variety that this end game offers is so rewarding. Part of the reason I was so entranced with Seiken Densetsu 3 when I was playing it in the early 2000s was because of the variance of classes and the variance of end game scenarios. And I mentioned when I was talking about the fights against the Crimson Wizard will be way different depending on whether you have Angela or Duran in the final party, and the Darkshine Knight is a complete non-entity in the story unless Duran's in your party. This is what's really rewarding about the game. There isn't really a canon ending or canon scenario, but all of the scenarios are interesting. And Charlotte's probably my least favorite of the game from a character perspective. But if she's in your party, then the sequence in the Elf Village and the sequence, all the sequences with Heath after he joins the enemy, are much more emotionally resonant.
Yeah, I like the fact that a lot of areas are locked out of stories as well. So you don't go to Ferolia if you're not playing Charlotte or Kevin's story. Like you never go there, and you can't go to Altina or Naval if you are playing through that story. So you've got that sense of mystery around those two areas. But
definitely brings you back in for a second playthrough for sure.
Definitely. And I'm really interested to see how the Heath boss fight plays out in Kevin's story. I would imagine instead of Heath being important, I would think Jagan, or not Jagan, the Goramand would be more significant.
I think you get more Goramond dialogue and much less Heath dialogue, but it's been a long time since I've played that route.
Yeah, I think that would make sense because Goramond is the one who killed or led him to kill his dog friend.
Yeah, but it turns out Carl did survive in Kevin's ending. Whether he's the main character or not, the Beast King reveals that he rescued Carl. So
great.
Yeah, there's so much of that I find at the end where it's just like, hey, don't worry, because I had Charlotte at the end too, and it's like, oh, he sacrificed himself to save the priest. And then it's like, Charlotte, I'm back. Don't worry, the mana goddess spared me.
Yeah.
Okay. But also what?
Yeah, they really do.
Nothing bad happens.
Yeah, they really do butter up the endings a little bit. I think the Darkshine Knight stays dead, even if Duran's in your party. But like the king's like, I'm sure you'll be just as good as a warrior as your father, Duran. Like some nonsense like that.
Mm-hmm. And you can finally go in his house.
Yeah, and Hawkeye's back together with his girlfriend, and Reese's brother ends up okay, and it's all very positive and almost a little bit too clean the way that it ends for each individual character.
Yeah,
and the fairy becomes the next mana goddess, but is going to spend 1,000 years revitalizing the mana tree.
Thank goodness.
Which was a nice little ending. It's like, I've been accompanying the future mana goddess this whole time. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, yeah, Trials of Mana. This is a very special game to me, and I cannot begin to describe the happy confusion that I felt when I watched that Nintendo Direct revealing its localization. But speaking of localization, we have a remake of this game coming in less than a year.
Yeah.
I think they said it's going to have a release worldwide in spring of 2020. We might even have a date, a month. Is it a May or April or something?
We don't have a date.
We don't have a month yet, no.
Okay. But still, now that we've all played at least one path of the game and are familiar with its characters, and we know that they aren't going to bring everything wholesale, and even in the trailers we see them doing movements and spells and skills that were not in original Trials of Mana.
Mm-hmm.
What's one thing that, either one change you hope they make, or one thing you desperately hope they include that they might not? Do we have any ideas in that vein?
In terms of change, I don't think that the sort of having to pause the gameplay to cast spells over and over and over again, because I've watched with my playthrough, I didn't have to pause for spells, and that's partially because I wanted to play it that way because it kind of drives me crazy. But I'd watch YouTube videos, and if you're playing Angela and other spellcasters, it's just constant pausing and selecting it, it's all you're doing, it looks like to me. And I'm hoping that they integrate that in, and you don't have to spend quite as much time, and maybe the AI can cast their own spells. That would be cool, I think.
I think maybe hotkeys would be able to help. If you're able
to, I think
to map enemy your allied skills onto unused buttons, maybe the triggers. You can switch characters on the fly very easily in original Trials of Mana, and that's great. But even just being able to assign your own skills to hotkeys or shortcuts, and just doing quick switches and then hit shortcut and then switch again, that would help things a lot. Also, if you could switch characters while you're spellcasting, that would be nice.
Yeah, I think that's stuff that'll be accessible. Yeah, I think that's a given that we won't have to do all that. I'd like to think so anyway. They didn't take it out of the Secret of Mana remake, but you could have one hotkey on each shoulder button. But only for magic.
The thing I would want is either more skills or more differences between jobs or between classes, because I love the class system in this game. I hope that they bring it back for the remake, especially with the color changes, because there's nothing more exciting in this game than seeing your character's color change with the class.
Absolutely.
So I
brings me back to Final Fantasy 1.
So I hope the class change system basically returns, but give you some more differences. Maybe the worst example is Kevin's dark classes don't learn any spells when he becomes a brawler, and his final classes have almost identical looking skills, but one of them learns a critical hit boost and one of them learns Moonsaber. So there's almost no difference between Kevin's final two dark classes, and they both just punch and cast a useless moon spell. but one of them has like I think higher spirit, and one of them has higher strength. So like if there was more differences to make the classes feel a little more unique. Some of them already feel incredibly unique, like Hawkeye's four are so different from each other that they almost feel like four different characters. One has the most support spells, one has the most offensive spells, one of them has the highest agility and deals the most damage with his spells, and the other one has the highest strength and the only one with a full screen tech. Those are extremely different. But like Kevin's always kind of feel the same. Angela's kind of always feel the same except for her last handful of spells. And I would like more differentiation between the classes. So bring back the class change system and make them feel a little bit more unique is my wish for the remake.
Yeah, speaking of class changes, I would like them to maybe think about the way that you do your second class change, because I think that's really opaque. Like without a guide, I mean, or without, in this case, I just, message Sollosi, I'm like, hey, what is this? I don't understand.
Yeah, even just a library to visit to read up on like these ancient artifacts or something.
Yeah, well, to the game's credit, it doesn't tell you what each class change does, but the class change item does tell you what it will change you to. If you
it's true. You just don't know what that class is.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
and just having to farm for seeds for it. Like if you don't get them and you don't remember where to go, I mean, there's a possibility you miss it.
Issue.
Yeah,
yeah. It doesn't tell you that you need those items or what they do.
Right.
Something like a library. I think you can get some of this by visiting a fortune teller. They'll sometimes tell you the next place you have to go, but even that's not very well communicated. And I'm not even 100% sure the fortune tellers tell you about the second class change.
Yeah, I can't remember, and I think that's why I never finished the game in the first place, because I struggled to find those items and never bothered double classing.
Okay, so Alana, do you have any ideas for the Trials of Mana remake that you'd like to see or like to see changed?
Well, I think making the class change items a little bit easier to get would be my thing. Make it different. Like maybe give 4 different statues, or maybe once you beat a Benevodon, you unlock a mana stone again, and you can touch it, and it will change you to one of the classes.
Well,
I don't know.
Maybe they make a true Mega Man change, and every time you beat a Benevodon, you gain its powers.
Or that one. But
that would be interesting, if they were tied to like defeating a Benevodon, you got a certain class unlocked, so that would affect how you wanted to try to do the order, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. That would be really cool. Maybe the other thing I would like to see is more distinct endings. So like a very character-specific ending. So you'll get, say I do a playthrough with Reese, Kevin, and Charlotte, I will get 3 endings for those characters, but not one overarching one. So if I did another playthrough with Reese, Kevin, and Angela, I would get the same 2 endings for Reese and Kevin. So it would be nice to have a specific ending for the main character I picked.
Chosen one.
Yeah, basically.
Maybe, okay, this is getting real weird. Maybe they could customize your ending based on some in-game choices you make. Like, if you have...
change,
yeah, you have Charlotte go Necromancer, so in her ending she becomes the next masked mage.
I really like that, actually. Yeah. I also just want to see what the Benevodons look like. I want to see how fluffy Dolan is. I want to see my lovely little pumpkin head grinning away as he slaps you with his tentacles. Like, I just want to see it all. But also, because the Secret of Mana...
2020 versions of these, like 2020 recreations of these bosses, not just the Benevodons, just all the cool bosses in this game.
The Jewel Eater would be so soft.
It's very exciting to me.
And we've already seen Full Metal Hugger, and he looks really cool. One last thing, I'd love to see a proper like 3D version of all the spirits, the mana spirits, because the Secret of Mana versions are just basically slightly pluffed up versions of what they are in the original game. So it'd be nice to see them wholesome and very pretty.
And also, of course, 3D Flammy and Booskaboo.
3D Flammy and Booskaboo. I'm really excited about 3D Booskaboo. Like, I can see his little flippers, and I'm really excited now. I just can't wait.
Well, the 3D mana spirits were probably one of my things I enjoyed about Dawn of Mana, is just seeing them brought to life in 3D models. And they were pretty good, and so that was, really neat. And then they had their very stereotypical voice work and such like that. But it would be nice to see them with a more 2020 treatment and just what changes they bring, because even then the ones in Trials of Mana are even more detailed than the ones we got in Dawn of Mana, which I think were more based on the more basic versions from Secret of Mana. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that little extra flair would be really neat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to how the Mana Spirits look also. So there's a lot to be excited for 2020's Trials of Mana, but 1995's Trials of Mana is pretty good, and now that all four of us are keenly aware of where it comes from, I think that that makes me only a little bit more excited for the future. It's again, this is one of my favorite JRPGs. I'm so glad that there's now a legal, easy way for people to experience it, and I mean, $40 for 3 games that are 24 years old or longer or older is a little. I think a little pricey. I would feel better if it was 30, but
Mm-hmm.
but
Bone special.
yeah, still this is a special game, and I don't regret the purchase one ounce.
Are you grabbing the physical version?
Maybe eventually. I don't need more clutter, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm moving. I used to be extremely attached to physical media, and now I'm getting less and less attached almost every year, just because I live in a space that I own, and seeing it get increasingly cluttered is troubling.
Agreed.
But okay, I think it's about enough of Trials of Mana for this episode. I mean, I think we universally liked it. I mean,
Absolutely.
Most of our complaints are of the nitpicky variety.
Yeah.
And I'm already in the middle of my second playthrough this year, and Alana's starting her third.
I did start a second one up too with Angela because I think that's the only story I haven't seen so far, but I haven't gone too far into it because I jumped over to Final Fantasy Adventure first before I go back into that.
Yeah, I started a playthrough with Kevin as the main character, and I'm using the 3 characters that I didn't use this past time.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, other than Kevin, yeah, I guess I still have to do a run with Hawkeye eventually. But yeah, I'm having I'm only at the I think at the first Benevodon right now, or maybe the Kingdom of Ferolia right before the first Benevodon in the second run, but I will finish it later this year because eventually I'll get tired of Trails of Cold Steel and Final Fantasy XIV, but not soon. But speaking of Trails of Cold Steel, that is the game that is the subject of next week. We are doing 2 episodes on the Legends of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel in August, and the first one of which is coming very soon. I'm still a little behind. I'm going to have some grinding to do before we record the next episode, but Alana and Zach, this game's real good. I'm looking forward to talking about it with both of you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, me too. Trials of school life.
Trials of school life. Trails of Mana. This is okay. We have
Trails of Mega Man spirits.
Yes. Trails of Mana Man. Yeah, okay. We haven't been that egregious in mixing up trails and trials so far, but it may yet happen. We have a full month of talking about Trails of Cold Steel ahead of us. But in between Trails of Cold Steel episodes, we are going to have episode 200 of Retro Encounter. This is episode 198. This is coming soon.
Ooh.
It has been quite a journey, and I will have a lot of self-conscious fun discussing that journey on that episode. But we won't exactly say what the episode is going to be like yet. We have not recorded it yet. And also, I don't want to talk about exactly who the subject is yet, but we are going to do another RPG villains episode in August, and that is still in the planning stages.
I will say I can't wait.
Yeah, but and I'll give one dumb hint. It is a villain whose game was played for the podcast in the past. So that might be enough for people to guess who it is, but.
Metal Hagar.
Yeah, that episode is coming. That episode is coming later in August. So, listeners, if you want to contact the podcast, the best way to do so is email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on the boards, visit the Facebook page, go to our Instagram, our Twitter, our Discord server, our Twitch channel. There's something streaming basically every day, and you can find links to all of those venues on the main website, rpgfan.com. We also have 2 other fine podcasts, Rhythm Encounter, which is on hiatus, and Random Encounter, which is hosted by Greg Delmage every 2 weeks.
Hello.
And you can review any of those podcasts and our podcast, and this podcast on iTunes or Google Play or however you are listening. We want all the feedback that we can stand, so please provide some.
I like validation.
Before we sign off, let's tell listeners how they can find us individually, starting with you, Zach.
You can email me at zachw@rpgfan.com or find me on Discord at zachw.
And Alana.
You can find me on Twitter at Alana Hagues, or you can find me on RPG fan related stuff as Diving Falcons with the Flammy icon.
And in our private Slack, you have a Booskaboo icon.
I sure do.
So yeah, you are all in on the mana transport.
I went from one kappa to another kappa, and I'm very happy about it.
All right, and Greg, how can listeners reach you?
At Greg Delmage, pretty much anywhere. At GDelmy on our Discord channel.
All right, that's about it. Listeners, if you want to reach me directly, you can find me at The Real Monsoon on Twitter, or Monsoon Mike on Discord, or just Monsoon on RPG Fans forums. This has been quite a trial, but we made it through okay.
I'm sad to see it go. Not gonna lie, I like having the excuse to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Now I'll just have to play it without a good excuse, which will happen anyway. Just as soon as I bring darkness back to Norvrant. Thank you, listeners.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Good night and good luck.